Welcome to this special dialogue with Etgar Keret, who I am delighted to introduce to you. As you know, Mr. Keret is a renowned Israeli writer and scriptwriter. His masterpieces and his books have been translated into more than 45 different languages. Mr. Keret is also a prominent observer and acute commentator on Israeli society and politics. And today we will ask him some questions on what is happening in Israel. This event is part of the year-long initiative which will lead us to the 9th edition of the Rome Dialogues, co-promoted by ISPI and the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Etgar Keret, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I will begin from what is happening inside the country. So Israel now is currently facing a domestic polarization that is really unprecedented in its history. And in describing it, you went as far as saying that the country is divided between two tribes. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think that we're living in a very partisan age, in which many unprecedented things happen in democracies around the world. If you think about Trump not accepting the elections in the US, people storming the Capitol, this didn't happen before in the US. And I think that wherever we look, we basically see now binary politics. You're either for and against, vaccinations. And the idea is that you have two camps, the two camps hate each other, have very little empathy to each other, and basically see in the other side an obstacle in a way for a national glory, So I think that, this had always existed, but with social media, it had become much more extreme, because the thing about social media is that ambiguity is not viral. Empathy is not viral. If I say, you are worse than Mussolini, then people will share and say, why do you say that? Yes, you should say that, But if I say, I like the way that you talk about the Middle East, but I think that you lack the knowledge to speak about Europe, then people will say, what, you like it, you unlike it, it's very difficult to choose. Now, I think that this age is even more extreme in Israel, because Israel is built on intrinsic tension. Because when Israel was formed, we said that we want to have a Jewish liberal state. Now, there is a tension between the term Jewishness that that is seen as religious and traditional, and liberal, because if you keep a religion, then you have two kind of manuals to work with. Which one should work? The ones that is written in the Bible, the ones that the rabbi tells you, or the ones that the policeman tells you, or the court tells you? And I think that there was some kind of an attempt to keep this status quo, to make changes, but little ones. Now, this government is an unprecedented government, because in Israel, you always had left and right, but when you make a government, you have to make a coalition with some people who do not agree with your ideas. So there is always kind of a mixture. But Netanyahu, after basically cheating and betraying all his potential partners, had to make this government with extreme right, religious, fundamentalist, racist people. And here you have a government that, if in the past it was a right-wing government, basically a little bit balanced by some more center figures, now it's a right-wing government being pushed to the messianic fundamentalist right. So there is no balance in the system. There are the inner argument is basically, if we should attack or attack strongly, if we should, discriminate or discriminate harshly. So when you have a government that is so extreme, of course, in a natural way, a big chunk of the society, I would say the majority of the society, dissociates themselves with that government, and there is something about the entire rhetoric of the government that usually when you're a prime minister, even if you're just polite, you try to pretend that you represent the people who did not vote for you, also. But in this government, it's very, very extreme. It's really like before they ran to the elections, they say, when we get elected, we will run you down the same way you run people with a car. We will punish you. When people demonstrated, against the initiative to weaken the Supreme Court and basically to make the prime minister a person who controls everything. So when there were demonstrations against that, so the prime minister and his sons, they called the demonstrators anarchists, terrorists. The minister told them that they should go to hell. Minister said that they're traitors who should be put in jail. When it's basically people saying we want to protect democracy, we want to have a strong Supreme Court. So I'm saying that there is something so fragmentized, and the idea is that the entire political system and the current political ideology of Netanyahu is basically leveraging the hate of his camp to the other camp to have a stronger hold. Because basically, when he ran to election, he made many promises. He kept none of them, because we have many problems that have to do with personal safety, people being robbed, having their cars stolen. We have a problem, economical issues, and he promised to deal with both, but did nothing about them, and was running as fast as he can to change the court system, to give extra benefit to his right-wing racist partners. For example, they wanted to have a law where if you have a business, you can refuse to give somebody service according to your belief, which basically means that if I'm homosexual and I comes to a hotel and the guy says, you know what, I'm religious, you can't have a room, or if I'm somebody who's racist with some kind of an excuse, I can say, you're an Arab, I don't have Muslims in my restaurant, So so little by little, they were, or not little by little, because with a big chunk, like 260 laws, they tried to change the country from keeping the status quo to a country that would be much more Jewish and much less liberal and democratic.
So apart from the two tribes, you're saying in the two manuals, they're following much more the Jewishness manual and the Jewish manual than the liberal manual. And this creates some instability within the system, of course. And but as you know, Israel for many years and for many decades has been watched for another crisis, another tension, which is the Israeli-Palestinian tension. And a few years ago, you wrote that instead of using the word peace to describe what we should aim at, we should start talking about a compromise. Do you still stand by this idea, and how far away is compromise today?
Well, I must say, to be realistic, is I think that there are different levels of emergencies, of necessities. And I'm all for the two-state solution. But to be honest, right now, what I'm fighting for is to have a system that will allow a discourse about it. My fear is that we reach a place where basically raising the idea of a two-state solution, will get me jailed, So when freedom of speech is threatened, when the ability of the little citizen to protect himself is threatened, then for me this is a priority. Now I want to say, and this is a fact, that since this government had been voted, there are much more violent actions against Palestinians, against Arabs, against homosexuals, against Christians. It doesn't matter. It's like everything that has to do with religion had been kind of released. Now, the idea is that when our minister of police is a person that had been indicted, 8 times, among things for terrorism, when our minister of police, we have a very extreme right-wing violent group called La Familia, and those La Familia people, they attack Arabs, they attack left-wingers. They are extremely violent, and many of the people who are active in it were jailed and put on trial. Now, when they do a demonstration, and our Minister of Police, Ben-Gvir, comes to meet the police force, on the way to the police force, he does high fives with those criminals, So the idea is that when the policemen see people do that, when people in the society see people do that, when you see your Minister of Police, basically being very, very friendly to people who are openly racist and kind of protecting them, then many people allow themselves to do things that they wouldn't allow themselves to do before. And that's really, really dangerous. And, and it already, we're already paying a high price for it.
Well, it's very clear, and it is, I mean, you have always been outspoken regarding your political views and your political position, as you're being right now. But what is interesting, and I would go on a personal side more in this part of our dialogue. But a few years ago, you said that during, well, at least during an interview, that you felt caught between a rock and a very hard place, referring to the fact that you were criticized at home for writing against the government, or shouting against the government, or protesting against the government in this case, and abroad for being Israeli. Has this changed in any way?
Well, I think that the brand Israel is losing power and height for very good reason. When you see settlers burning down a Palestinian village, people don't like Israel more because of that. But again, I want to say something about, all my life I've been an activist, or I'm a left-wing liberal. These days, what happened is fundamentally different. If I may use a metaphor, that I would say that I play for the left-wing liberal football club. Many people play for the right-wing club. And we play, and like in games, I say the referee is wrong, I deserve a penalty.
A match, someone else wins the match, so...
Yeah, this had always happened. But what's happening right now is that when I go to demonstration, many of the people I demonstrate with together are people I used to fight with. I'm a left-wing liberal. I go to demonstration where the people who speak are the ex-chief of staff, the ex-head of Secret Service. These were people that I actively fought against, but now they are with me because this is not a football match anymore. This is all the players who love the game fighting to keep the rules. This current government, a government in Israel is elected for 4 years. Among the first thing they said that actually they're going to stay for 5 years. They want to be 5 years, not 4 years. And next election, they want to have a head start. They're messing with the system. And the idea is that many people demonstrate together. When I go to the demonstration, you could see people who are against occupation and people who are chiefs of staff that are basically against destroying the court system, because then they'll be sent to court in Hague, So the interests are different, but I think all the people who have some sense realize that to our security, to our economy, to our conscience, to our social structure, to all those kind of things, there is no upside except for the fact that some people in the government thinks that it will make the Messiah arrive sooner, But this idea of kind of a Jewish holiness serving us, our Minister of Treasury, that, by the way, gave an interview with a map in which parts of Jordan belongs to Israel, because this is how he reads the Bible, and Jordan is a friendly country. It's a little bit like, imagine a minister in Italian government showing a map where parts of Switzerland belong to Italy, because he read in the New Testament is that the Romans will conquer the earth or whatever. So I'm saying, so this guy, he said when he was elected that he said, we try to do economy by so many systems, and it never really succeeded. But we never try to do economy in the spirit of the Bible. Now, when I'm in the 21st century and I have a minister who wants to make an economy in the spirit of the Bible, then I'm a little bit stressed. I don't know how many countries in the EU believe in an economy in the spirit of the Bible, but I would bet that if there are any, they are not leading the EU and they are not leading prosperity on this planet.
You're speaking about, of course, another tension. It's a dialogue between among tensions, we're saying. And in another, I think, interview, you declared that you felt more Jewish than Israeli. And now you're saying the problem, one of the main problem of our countries, of our country, is that we're being too Jewish in some sense. So. How is the reflection about this identity issue going on in you right now? Because it must be difficult to, combine these two. Yes, I'm Jewish. Yes, I'm Israeli, but I'm not Jewish as the others. I'm not Israeli as the others.
So I think this is an excellent point, because you must understand that when you talk about Christian identity, it's pretty simple, But when you talk about Jewish identity, so there's even an argument, what does Jewish identity means? Me being agnostic, I would say that, that for me to be Jewish is my heritage, it's my values, it's my history. For others, to be Jewish means that I should live by the rules of the Bible. But even among those who want to live among the rules of the Bible, there is much tension, because if you think about it, the Jewish God basically created us in our image, which means that every trait that a human has, God has it too. So God is compassionate, but God is also vengeful, So I always believed the Jewishness was all about compassion. The Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and the people in the religious right wing in the government believe that being Jewish is all about being vengeful. Really, they talk about that. How basically, if you want to keep the ways of the Bible, if you want God to like you, you have to be vengeful. It's you are asked to, you're obliged to be vengeful. So I'm saying, when you talk about God, people have theological arguments since the beginning of history. But in Israel, the bottom line, it's really this idea. What does it mean to be Jewish? Does it mean that I have a different perspective of life? Or does it mean that God likes me much better than he likes you? And this argument, it's totally personal. I believe that being Jewish is not about being liked more by God. I think that being Jewish is about carrying some duties that has to do with the history of my people. My parents are Holocaust survivor, so I believe that I'm obliged to be sensitive to minorities, and not to oppress other people. People who pass the Holocaust, some say, my parents are Holocaust survivors, so my lesson is that I have to be strong and kill everybody around me. You can always contextualize things. And when it comes to something as obscure as Jewish identity, then it's even more confusing.
Well, it's very clear, but how these, I can say, this difficult situation affect what you write?
Well, in the demonstrations, I every week I make a sign, and one week I made a sign that said, I used to write books, now I write signs, because in a sense, I think that for me, it's almost humiliating to use my writing talent to try and affect people's opinion. Because as a writer, I want to write a story that will confuse you, that will show you that humanity is more complex than you think. But in a political debate, I try to show you that you're wrong. I try to show you that we should do that, which is something that as a writer, I feel humiliating, as if I'm prostituting my talent, or misusing my talent, and and I think that when I go to demonstrations, I try to channel my creativity now to something that is effective, Not that I believe that if I write the perfect sign, Netanyahu will resign, but I believe that if I go to a town square and shout, I should pick my words carefully. Now, right now, I can't deal with the complexity of life. I just try to give my best interpretation of this simplicity of fighting for the right to be able to say in the future the things that I want to say. You know, it's basically like keeping a seat in a concert. The concert hadn't started, but now I'm fighting because I know that when it's going to start, it's going to be too late.
Well, thank you very much, Etgar Keret, for your insight, your personal views, your political positions expressed in a very articulate way, in a very, I would say, long and I would say acute way. Jewish way. Many might not agree with what you said, but you said it very clearly, very clearly. So I thank you for this, and well, I hope to see you perhaps in November in Rome for the Med Dialogues. Thank you for everybody who was watching and is watching this dialogue. Thank you.